You know the feeling when you're working so hard at Instagram, you're being consistent, you're posting quality content, all of the things, and yet you're still not pulling any leads in from it? It's soul crushing. So what do you do when you're doing all of the right things, but they're not leading to actual conversations? Today's guest is Michelle Berman-Mikel, and she flips the switch on what it means to use Instagram as a lead generation method. Expect to learn what it means to prospect on Instagram, specifically who to target, where to find that target, and exactly what to say in both comments and story replies to generate response. If you love a step-by-step process, this show is definitely for you. You're listening to the Real Estate Rockstars podcast, the show for agents who've been around the block and are ready to finally build a sustainable and scalable business. Learn the exact steps to build a business that runs like a machine, one you don't secretly hate or want to escape from. My name is Shelby Johnson, and I'm an Army veteran turned real estate entrepreneur. I've closed hundreds of transactions as a solo agent, team leader, and real estate investor before taking over hosting this here podcast. I'm also an agent in Lexington, Kentucky, ready to love on all of your referrals. Hit me up on the gram at The Shelby Show. More on all that coming soon. But for today, it's time to learn how to pull in real leads from your Instagram. Rockstars, welcome Michelle Berman-Mikel. Okay, Michelle, we've had a ton of shows lately on content creation specifically for Instagram, but your method is very different than all of those. You believe in like active prospecting through Instagram. So what does that mean?
Yeah, great question. So active outbound prospecting is really a new way at looking at creating relationships. I think is a good way to create an underlying framework there. So typically when people use social media, specifically Instagram in this case, they produce content and they just put it out there and then they sort of wait, right? That's the kind of passive aspect of what we're talking about, where they crush the content side, meaning they're posting consistently, they're showing up on Reels, they're doing all the things that they're supposed to do, but they're just sort of sitting and waiting on the receiving of messages or the comments that may or may not come in. And if they do get those, then they respond, right? So that's what we call passive prospecting, just like in your day-to-day real estate business. You know, you're calling people or you're waiting for someone to call you, like whatever the dynamic might be for you. That's kind of what we're talking about. But with Instagram specifically, what we teach it and the focus is outbound prospecting, meaning you are reaching out to people intentionally. So you are deciding what categories that might make sense in, which I'm sure we can get into, but every person will have kind of a different day of the week based off of a different ideal client. And you kind of build that out according to what your goals are. But the idea is that we are going out and seeking opportunity versus waiting for the opportunity to come to us. So really, really big shift. And obviously, you know, if you have good content and you're producing consistently, what I teach is going to only get amplified and make it easier for you to execute. Now, if you're listening to this and your content is struggling, then we do need to fix that first, right? Like you do have to have good content in order for it to then matter when you do prospecting. But the idea is in phase one of your sort of Instagram marketing as a whole, you're focused on content development. Once that's a well-oiled machine, then we start talking about the prospecting piece because we need to go start conversations so that we're actually initiating it versus just passively sitting back and waiting. Because I will tell you, Shelby, like the number one thing that people say to me is, well, I've been doing Instagram for a long time. It's not doing anything for me. Like I haven't gotten any business off of it, but I've been posting consistently and I've been on it for years. Right. And the number one reason that I have found over doing this for close to 10 years is people are just not outbound prospecting. They're not reaching out to try to go find it. And so I just saw a hole in the game and filled it.
Okay. And it is an incredible hole because we really have had so many people on here talking about Instagram content creation and they've been amazing, but no one has talked about outbound prospecting at all. So, okay, if I'm listening to this and I have, decent content rolling and I'm interested in outbound prospecting, who am I reaching out to? Like, what are the first steps in being strategic and thinking about the who, the how, all of that stuff, so I'm not just throwing spaghetti at the wall?
Such a good question. And the reason, the answer to your question is three parts. So in phase 2 of all of this, which is the prospecting piece specifically, there are 3 parts to that. So who are we talking to is the first thing we have to tackle, knowing who to be reaching out to, what those categories will look like. And then the second part is what to say to them. So there's an entire process built into how to make sure that we're actually initiating conversation properly so that we do get responses. We don't come across as the, sleazy car salesman in our DMs that we all get messages about all the time. Or we can just tell when we get those messages, it doesn't feel good. We don't like being on the receiving end. So I certainly don't want you guys to be the one sending those types of messages. So part 2 is all about what to actually say. And then part 3 of this prospecting piece is the tracking aspect. So another big thing that I hear all the time is, well, I have Instagram. It's been doing really well, but I'm not sure, I can't directly correlate any business that has come directly from Instagram, right? Really common conversation that I have. And so when we're talking about tracking, it allows us to really identify who are we reaching out to, and then are they responding? And then how is that filter gone through to the point where we're now on the phone with them, or we're now on a Zoom meeting, or whatever it might look like for you. So we have a tracking mechanism in place to allow you to track this. So for all of my OCDers out there that love being able to say, this is coming from this, that's what the tracker piece is all about. But that's just a rundown on the 3 parts to phase 2. But the first part is, I think, the most important, right? Who to be talking to in the first place. So for a real estate agent, this is kind of the typical big 30,000 foot view that I would describe it to, or the process to you as. And really, it's your top 5 cities, your top 5 zip codes, whatever that might look like, depending on where you are, right? So the biggest thing is focusing on hyper local for agents. Most agents are focused on, their specific subdivision or sub-cities or specific handful of zip codes, not nationwide, right? Unless you're on the recruiting side, or unless you're on the I'm building this a giant team or a downline side. You're more very, very focused right on that hyper local. Where am I currently living, and where do I currently want to do business? So I'm going to just go that direction and kind of leave the bigger picture of recruiting and all of that out, just for the sake of context and clarity. But you'll pick your top 5 cities or sub-cities, and then you'll have a specific day of the week assigned to that city. And what you'll do in that is you'll outbound prospect there. So you'll find hashtags related to it, geotags related to it, accounts specifically related to it, and you'll initiate contact or initiate conversation in there. So this is part 1 of prospecting, and what we call it is brand awareness prospecting. So there's 2 different types, right? There's brand awareness prospecting, which is we're just trying to get our name everywhere and anywhere in our 5 cities or sub-cities. So a lot of times, you guys have used the word community mayor very regularly in the real estate world. That's kind of what we're trying to do. So when you choose your 5 cities or sub-cities, you break it down, hashtags, accounts, geotags, and then you're outbound prospecting, meaning you're commenting on stuff, you're replying to stories. The intention is to get replies. So how to do that, make sure you end everything in the form of an open-ended question, right? Which I'm sure we'll have a second to talk about.
I was like, don't go. I have questions on this before we move forward. Okay, perfect. So with that, even hyperlocal though, if you're doing cities and zip codes, I feel like it's still a really big pool. And maybe I just don't understand well enough about, how to, so I have a zip code in mind. What do I actually do now?
I love your question so much. So great direction to go in here. So if you're in Shelby's boat here and you're kind of like, okay, well, I have a specific zip code in mind. I have a specific city in mind because that's my place. Now, here's what I want you guys to think about this, or how to think about this is hashtags related to your city, for example. So Shelby, what's a city, for example? Just name one that would come to mind for you.
Lexington, Kentucky.
Okay. So Lexington, Kentucky is big, right? Quite frankly. So what we're going to choose is we're going to choose specific hashtags related to Lexington, but we're going to add either a subword or a passion word attached to that. So for you, that might be some form of fitness, right? So maybe it's like gyms related, it might be, ultra running, or just running in general, right? That you and I have talked about in the past. So you're going to add kind of a subword to it. And what will happen is you're going to find your community of people in your specific city or zip code that you're focused on. So for me, for example, it's kind of the easiest example that I can give contextually, but I live in Clarksville, Tennessee, and I'm a big CrossFit person. I run a lot. I'm actually getting ready to run a half marathon here shortly. And what I would do if I were to say tomorrow, I'm going to start going and selling real estate full time, my ideal client would be someone that lives in Clarksville that happens to be into fitness and most likely is a military wife since I am one myself, right? So I would find all of the local gyms. I would find all of the local hashtags related to those local gyms. So again, I'd find the accounts and the hashtags related to it. So it might be hashtag Clarksville Fitness, hashtag Clarksville Gyms, things that are going to get me, hashtag Clarksville CrossFit, right? Things that are going to get me directly to my community of people that I'm trying to attract. Now, this is very, very important because I actually just got back from a conference where we were talking about this. It was a mastermind. And one of the things that is a huge problem in the social media space is people are trying to be everyone or trying to be someone for everyone when that's never going to work. And that's equally true when it comes to prospecting, because think about the best clients you've had. Most likely the reason you put them in your best client category is because you have a bond with them that you don't have with others. Right? So you have this kind of shared interest or this sort of shared passion with somebody where you feel like you already know them and you've been working with them forever, even though you just started working with them for a transaction, right? Or when the transaction closes, that turns into a friendship where now you're continuing and spending time together even outside of that. And again, why does that happen? Because you're living in your space, right? You're creating a community of people that you're really attracted to and they're attracted to you. So if we boil that down, right? For you, Shelby, if you add like the key term at the end of the word Lexington or even put it in the front, right? And this is where hashtagging kind of gets fun, where you can put the keyword in front of the word Lexington. You can abbreviate it. If you're using, instead of Lexington, Kentucky, all the way spelled out, maybe it's KY, right? So all the different abbreviations, you're going to get different pools of content. And then you can now scroll the content and say that this piece of content pops out at me, this piece of content pops out at me, and then that's where you're going to spend your time engaging. So does that help?
Yes. One more question. So I pulled up Instagram. Am I going over to like the Explore, like search, and that's where I'm typing this in, or like where am I typing this in?
Yep, exactly. So you'll click the little magnifying glass at the bottom of the screen. In the search bar up at the top, you'll type in your key term, right? So hashtag Lexington, whatever, or the word in front and then the word Lexington. And make sure you put the KY or double check your research when you click on it. If not, because there are other Lexingtons out there. So you just want to make sure you're engaging where you're supposed to. But if I can add this, the reason why this is so important and the reason why I've spent such a long time curating this strategy really comes down to prospecting as a whole can feel very abrasive for a lot of agents, right? Like they don't want a cold call. They don't like door knocking. They don't like this feeling of sort of getting hung up on or like, hey, I'm sorry if I'm catching you at a bad time. And in addition to that, right, what we have noticed is in order to really build bonds that will last, we have to connect first. And so that's the key with digital prospecting and really the core foundation of what I'm teaching is build a connection with someone, find your community and build it, and then go for the business and then go for the ask. So you're really nurturing your audience. You're not just going for the kill right out of the gate. Now, on two hands of the spectrum or two sides of the spectrum, you might say, well, wouldn't that take longer than me just calling them? Maybe, but maybe not, right? Because if you're doing it well, you're reaching out, you're talking to them about them, you're building a relationship based off this shared connection. That connection creates easy conversation. And then you just got to use your intuition and say, okay, this conversation's going really well. You're obviously in the same city as me. We're obviously similar. We have shared passions and shared interests. Hey, Shelby, I think the best next step was just to get on a call and chat. And in that, right, we're subliminally dropping real estate conversation. So that person knows you're a realtor and they're by far or most likely going to click on your profile and know that you're a real estate agent. They're going to have consumed your content. And again, it really just comes down to intuition.
Mm. Okay. One more question on, so the hashtag, clearly I'm not in touch with my hashtag geotags type of thing. So when I'm searching, that's going to bring up anything that is hashtagged or geotagged for that specific location and passion category within that Explore area?
Yeah. So in the search bar in the explore area, if you type in the actual hashtag symbol, it's going to show you all the hashtags related to it. So you would put the pound sign and then the word. But if you leave the pound sign out, then at the very top, you'll see where it'll say like places, places, accounts, hashtags, or it just labels it as tags, but that's the same thing. So those three buckets, right? If you click places, that's going to show you all of the geo tags that you could click on. And then when you click on that, you'll see anyone who has ever tagged themselves at that location. So now why is that important? And honestly, I think geotags, in my opinion, is a gold mine on the platform. It's a very untapped tab. Most people don't even know that it's there. But just like Facebook, right? If you tag yourself somewhere, other people can see that. And if you click on that location, you can see that on the business's account. So it's the same concept on Instagram, but for you, like if we're talking fitness, right? And you look up Lexington gyms and you just see all of the gyms in your local area, right? And you click on that, anyone who's ever tagged themselves there is going to have a slot there. You're going to see content there. And most likely it's people that live there, have recently been there, right? So you're now talking to people that it's actually a really relevant conversation versus this person tagged themselves here 7 years ago. Like, do they even live here anymore? I don't know. Right. So it gives you the most recent content that is going to make sure that, hey, this person was recently here. They obviously live here. And now you're talking to your person.
Okay. This makes so much sense. So the number one, the who we're talking to is you're first going to see what zip code or city. So it's really the location of your who first. And then you're going to tap on whatever passion project those people that you like. Gym people do tend to like each other. So, and then from there, you specific on, one day of the week, you're going to search that combination of one zip code or one city in addition to that passion project. The next day, you're going to search the next. But okay. So I think we're there. We're being me. I'm with you now. So that is the who that we're talking to. The next part is I've pulled them up. I'm on my explore page and I'm looking at all of my hashtags and geotags and I'm so excited. What do I do now?
Great question. Again, you're full of great questions today. The next piece is what to say to them, right? So that's sort of the part that we're in now. Once we have identified who our audience is, then we get to now talk to them. And so to quickly, before we get into that, just a quick side note, each day of the week, you're obviously going to have a different category. Every single day of the week is not only going to be your zip codes, right? I don't have time to get into like the full details, but you'll have a second week. And in the second week, you'll actually be working your database. So you'll be working people that are in your CRM. You'll be working people that are connected to you on Facebook. Example, I have a client that I'm working with right now that has an 8,000 person Facebook group and she's not connected to them or talking to them well on Instagram at all. Like she just hasn't learned how to move them over. Hence why she has hired us to help her do that. But the idea is you have week one of hyperlocal where you're really digging into brand awareness and your zip codes and creating conversation there. And then in week two of your prospecting cycle, you're going to be focused on data that you already have access to, right? So who's in your database, who's in the Facebook group you're already running, cross-pollinating LinkedIn, right? Lots of people are using LinkedIn really heavily. So making sure that we're talking to the people that we're connected to on LinkedIn, but on Instagram specifically, really creating sort of this indoctrination funnel, if you will, of like, where do we want them to be? So that we can now talk to them really consistently and stay top of mind with our content and the conversations that we're initiating. So to answer your question of now what, right? So the very first thing that you'll do when you are finding these people is click on their profile and look at their profile as a whole, right? And disclaimer, everything I'm about to describe takes seconds, right? So don't be overwhelmed by, oh, this is going to take me so much time. It doesn't. It's just me clarifying it and explaining it thoroughly for you guys. So if you find someone in your hashtag search or in your account search, Shelby, for example, click on their profile, look at their profile as a whole, look at their most recent piece of content, scroll a handful of things, read their bio, have an understanding of who this person is, even if it's a litmus test of it, right? Like it's very fast. And what you will do is click on their most recent piece of content, look at the post, read the caption. If they have a story up, what do they have going on in stories, right? And in a perfect world, your job would be to comment on the most recent piece of content and a story that they have up. So you're doing both, right? And what do you say is important? So on the most recent piece of content, your focus is going to be just one thing and one thing only, which is what I call acknowledgement. So if you don't read the caption, you're going to have a hard time acknowledging what the person posted in your comment. So read the caption. If it's a video, watch the video, comment very intuitively. And the idea with your comment specifically, and this goes for everybody, is your goal is to get it read. So when you're leaving a comment, how are you doing that, right? Are you saying awesome content, good luck? Or are you just doing like a heart emoji? Like, you're not going to get a response to that. So I can tell you, I get a lot of comments. And the biggest thing I will say is the people who actually take the time to read what I say and say something intentional, they're the priority for me to respond to. So you want to think about, am I leaving a comment that's actually going to get read? Does it take me an extra 20 seconds to read the caption? Yeah, but I'm going to get a response as opposed to the alternative, right? So this is not a good place for someone who is just going to go on a rampage and heart everything. It's not a good place for someone that's just going to say, awesome content, great video, right? It's not going to work. So you're going to come to me and send me a DM and probably say, Michelle, your strategy doesn't work. And then I'm going to look at your comments and be like, that's why. So don't be that guy. So on comments, on content, again, your only goal is acknowledgement, right? You want it to be intentional enough that someone's actually going to reply. Now, if you respond to stories, which again, you definitely should, reason being is that's going to end up in someone's DMs. So now we're having a one-to-one private conversation, which is where people are naturally going to be more likely to open up. Conversations are going to be able to be continued over a long period of time. And so with story replies, it's a little bit of a different strategy. It's 3 parts. So your first initial outbound message is 3 parts. All 3 parts is one message. So I'll just say that again quickly. Your first message when you respond to a story is 3 parts, but all 3 parts make up one message. So you're not sending 3 separate messages. All 3 parts is one. I've had so many people ask me that question, and I'm just like, extra clarifying. So the story reply specifically, the 3 parts, first and foremost is acknowledgement. Same thing that we just mentioned, right? Watch the post or watch the story, watch the video, read the caption that somebody put on there. Because when you first respond, that acknowledgement piece is huge, right? To make sure that that person feels seen and heard, and it's about them, not you. And then the second piece specifically is subliminal business play. Now, I will tell you, this is notoriously the part that is the hardest for people. But really, it's very important because this is where we have to weave, hey, we're busy, and hey, we have clients, and hey, we sell real estate into our initial message. And then the third part is question, right? Ended in an open-ended question, who, what, why, how, something along those lines, with the intention of getting a response. That's the whole point of why we do that, because our goal is to have this person respond so we can continue the conversation. Now, acknowledgement and question. So the first part and the third part is about them. It is about the person that you are reaching out to. It is not about you, right? And then the subliminal business play is typically going to be about, hey, what do you do for a living, or how can you weave it in? And I can give some examples if it would be helpful.
Oh, you knew that's exactly where I was going. I literally have written down with exclamation points over here, need examples. Hit me. What's an example?
Oh my God. So a good one, I've used this one a few times because people laugh and I'm all about that. But Girl Scout cookies, right? We've not in Girl Scout cookie season anymore. It's far too hot for that. But when we go to Walmart, right, we like to buy cookies from the little girls out front. Or I bought probably $200 worth from my next door neighbor just to support her. But Girl Scout cookies is a good one. So let's say you, for example, Shelby, posted in your stories that you went and bought a bunch of Girl Scout cookies. And let's pretend I'm the real estate agent trying to prospect you. You're in my hyper local area. You're into fitness just like I am. So I'm now trying to start a conversation with you. You posted a picture or a video of you buying Girl Scout cookies from the girls at Walmart. And this is how I would respond, or something along these lines. I would say, oh my gosh, I fell for this too. I actually bought $200 worth. I can't believe it. My husband was pissed, exclamation point. Subliminal business play is the second piece. And how that would sound is, luckily though, they're not all for me. I have a couple of closings next week. So I'm actually going to go ahead and give some of them away so that they're not all in my kitchen. And then open-ended question at the end, I will say something like, what did you buy them for? Or are they all for you? Or is, what's your favorite? My favorite this year is the what do they call them? Just lost it. Campfire ones. It's the s'mores version. They're new. But that would be an example of the 3 parts. So acknowledging, hey, I bought those too. I actually fell for that. Subliminal business play is actually, I have a bunch of closings next week, so I'm going to go ahead and give them away as closing gifts or as part of my closing gift. And then open-ended question is, are they all for you? And again, I'm talking directly at you. Does that help?
I think that, yes, that example, it's really relatable. My husband was pissed part. I spent $200 on so I adding in things that are kind of universal in regard to basic humanity is really smart. And you did not skimp out. You didn't do the bare minimum on 1, 2, and 3 just to check the block. That was a legitimate message that you sent to people, which people can feel. Anyone who's listening, you've gotten those messages probably from editors or, VAs being like, I can change your business or, free leads or whatever. And you just know right away that it's not a person, it's not personalized. Even if they change out your name in the beginning and it's like, hey, Shelby, I'm like, you're not real. And this is it could not be more authentic and real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the whole point. And because I think the problem with prospecting as a whole in the traditional sense, right? And I'm talking back in the day is going to sound bad because it's still true and still relevant now. But when a real estate agent becomes a real estate agent and they get their license, the first thing that they're taught is tap into your sphere, right? Call, door knock, do open houses, all of these things that are designed to create outbound opportunity, right? So you have to put yourself in the position to create the opportunity. And the hard part for a lot of people is getting on the phone with someone. If someone does answer on a cold call, what's the first thing you do? You typically will go in, hi, this is Shelby. I'm actually calling about your property at da-da-da-da, right? Or whatever your script is. And we forget that the whole point of the transaction is building a relationship, right? So we can't build a relationship if we don't have any details about this person, and we're just on a straight up cold call. So when I was doing when I was building this entire strategy, my thought is, what type of person would I answer if someone called like that, right? Or what type of person would I want to work with when it came to my money? And the biggest thing with that is I want to work with someone that I feel connected to. I want to work with someone that makes me feel seen and feel heard. And when we prospect through the social platform like Instagram, we can really get to know the person first. We can establish some semblance of a relationship so that when we do get on the phone with them, they're qualified to be on the phone with us. They're excited to be on the phone with us. And the best part about it, and this is just from what time and time and time again tells me and tells my clients that are doing it, is they're not going to shop you around. They have chosen you, right? And the best calls I have even still to this day is people will say, Michelle, I've heard a lot of people, I've listened to a lot of videos, but you're my person. And it usually doesn't necessarily have anything to do with work, right? A lot of it has everything to do with who I am as a human being, because you have to share that, right? People will feel connected to you as a human, and then they'll be more likely to even listen to what you have to say, even if it's the same quote unquote product that somebody else might be selling. So there's a lot of real estate agents out there. Hell, there's a lot of real estate agents in Lexington, Kentucky. How are you the person, or why would you be the person that I would choose? And this really, in my opinion, solves the problem of the gap between we don't know who we're calling when we pick up the phone. We just have a name and a phone number. And this is someone that's going to say yes and actually going to talk to me. And I'm actually going to have a conversation that's worth my time. And I would rather have 10 of those a day than 100 cold calls where one answers, because I only got 2 hours to do it.
Okay. So after we've done that 3-step intro, basically the story, reply, you've already done the comment, but the story, you're totally right. DMs, I'm much more likely to reply and engage. So they reply to you after your very calculated, your 3-step amazing formula, and you guys are chatting. How do you do, what's next after that? Are you pushing hard towards something, or are you just going to let it fizzle out and then follow up with them the next day, or what's the process?
No. So the answer is live in the land of curiosity. And I'll say that one more time and then explain it. But you have to live in the land of curiosity. So what that means is ask more questions than you give statements. So let's say you respond to me, Shelby, and it's kind of vanilla, it's kind of a fast, just a one-liner, and because you're kind of I don't know, what is this person doing?
Who are you?
Sort of you're kind of just well, that was a really nice message, but wait, hold on, right? So you sort of just give me a short response. Now my job is to keep the conversation going or to create opportunity for the conversation to continue. So even if you only reply to me with a handful of words or it's only a statement, I'm going to respond to your response with another question with the intention of keeping the conversation going. Now, the other piece to living in the land of curiosity is eventually you might open up to me, right? So someone might respond with a short answer. I then respond with another question. You then respond. Maybe it's a little longer. Maybe now you're asking me a question, right? But as long as I live in that curiosity space, I'm making it about them. I have to make them feel like they're important in this, and that I'm not just here to sell them something, right? Now, in the process, the reason why subliminal business play is so important is we are weaving in this conversation around real estate, and the idea is to drive them to actually click on our profile and go see what we do. But one thing I want to, again, another disclaimer, right, is if you're talking about fitness, for example, like you and I, Shelby, we've talked about fitness a ton, right? Great example. But if I am talking to somebody about fitness and then you click on my profile and you go and you don't see anything about my fitness whatsoever anywhere in any of the content I produce or in any of the stories that I have up, there's a disconnect, right? You've now sort of lost that bond that you're trying to build. Great example is I had a real estate agent reach out to me about the half marathon that I ran a few months ago. And she was like commenting on all my stuff when we were going back and forth in DMs. And every time I clicked on her profile, I was like, there's nothing about this chick running anywhere, like at all. So I'm like, is she legit? Like there's no stories of her running, like, and it's these little subliminal tweaks in our minds, right? And this is human psychology. For those of you guys who are psychology nerds, you'll understand this. But if there's not content around that, you're going to lose the bond. It's going to be harder for you to earn my business, just quite frankly, right? But if I click on your profile and there's a whole bunch of half marathons you've recently ran, you have a whole highlight for it, and it's like this big part of what you do, then all of a sudden that bond is really solidified. And I kind of use the Avatar example, if you've ever seen the movie. In both the first one and the second one, different types of animals, but same concept. They have these really long tails, like all the animals have these really long tails that connect to the Avatarian person. And that bond has to be built. It has to be created. And then it's sealed for life. Right. And that's kind of a glorified, oh my gosh, this is like fairy tale land example. But that's the reality of it, is we're trying to create a bond that will actually stick. So the content you produce and the lifestyle content you share becomes the foundation for how we prospect. So if you're not posting, again, this is why content is phase one. If you're not posting about these personal things, if you're not showing up authentically, and then you try to show up authentically in your messages, you're going to have a hard time bonding those two things, which is why you need to do both.
Okay. How many are we doing a day? How many outbound? Is there a number count? Is it an hour count? What do we do?
So there's both. There's really like a number count that I shoot for our clients that are brand new to it. But most importantly, I would say it's more of a time count for people that are newer to it, because when I say 45 comments and 20 story replies, people are like, oh my gosh, how long is that going to take me? And the reality is I can do 45, 20 in 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops. But for someone that's really new to it, that's learning the platform and learning this process of outbound prospecting, I tell them, time block an hour, right? Most agents are time blocking well over an hour for prospecting anyway. So this needs to be one of your non-negotiable outbound prospecting methods, right? So maybe you're calling for an hour, maybe you're DMing or doing this social prospecting for an hour. And then maybe your third hour of prospecting is your door knocking or whatever else is on your Instagram or social flywheel or prospecting flywheel, whatever you want to call it.
Dude, the cool thing about this too is that when you start doing it, and I know this because you and I, we've talked, Michelle, and so like I guinea pigged it, I tested it, and super cool. Out of nowhere, people started following me. And I was like, I always, like, where'd you find me? And they're like, the Instagram algorithm recommended you. And I think it was purely just based on like activity and responses with other people within, the realm I wanted to live in. And then Instagram was like, oh, activity. Oh, people like her. There's DMs, and then was pushing it. So it's like kind of this thing that once the snowball effect takes effect, it's pretty fucking cool. But real quick.
It's the compound effect. Literally, yeah. I mean, how many real estate agents have read that book? It's literally the compound effect in real life.
Okay, so the problem though is what happens. So if you're doing 45 comments and 20 story replies, doing the activities, sure, I can get behind you 30 minutes, time block for an hour. The problem comes when people start replying. At least for me, because you could spend all day just replying and then the next day you're supposed to do 45 and 20 more. So can you talk about how do we manage that? Is it time blocked? What do I do?
Yeah, good question. And I think it really comes down to you got to do what's going to work for you. And I think people that are at different phases of their careers, that answer is going to look a little bit different, right? If you're the one doing the outbound prospecting, but you're crazy, crazy busy and you've got 5, 7 transactions happening all at the same time, or you're running this big team and you're just like, holy crap, there's no way I have an hour or an hour and a half a day to not only or to do the prospecting and respond. That's where you can tap in support, right? So we train a lot of assistants. I don't love the virtual assistants in this realm. I will say it just is, it's not that it can't be done, but it's hard, right? And the reason for that is nobody knows who you know the way that you know them. Yeah. Right. Like if I were to have a VA get into my DMs with me and you, Shelby, this, like, you'd be like, what the heck? That's not Michelle. And that person's never going to be able to respond to you the way that I would, because that person doesn't know my relationship with you. So I will say for some people, I have them skip days. So I have them go every other day. For some people, I have them only do 20 instead of 45, right? So it's a more limited number, more conservative number. For me, I'll be totally frank, I only do about 5, maybe 10 a day, because my goal in my specific categories is very, very intentional. So like I have a podcast day, I have an event day, I have a webinar type goal day, right? Meaning my CTAs for each of those 5 days is very specific, and I can get a response from someone that I very specifically want a response from pretty quickly. So I don't have to necessarily prospect the way that I did 3-4 years ago when I was initially building the strategy. Meaning if I send 5 messages, I'm probably getting 5 replies, as opposed to, before I would have to do 45 to get the 5 solid, really, really good, like these are opportunities. So again, to your point before, the compound effect will take place. And Shelby, you're probably more along the lines of me, where you may only need to do 5 to 7 a day tops in order to really get the end result that you're after, which, that's going to look different for everybody.
Okay. For actually replying, doing these activities for the searching the target and then finding them and commenting and replying, are you doing it on your phone? Are you doing it on your computer? Do you use, I don't know if you've ever heard, you probably heard of it, but Go High Level integrates with Instagram. So you can do it through your CRM. What's your process?
Yeah. We actually used to use Go High Level, for for my company as a whole, for our sales engine, quote unquote, if you will. And when we had a really big sales team, and what we discovered was that Go High Level, while it was easy to see all of them in one place, the functionality outside of that just made it hard for us to do what we were trying to do. Doesn't mean it can't be done, right? I do know a lot of people that are using Go High Level to specifically respond to their messages. I almost 100% of the time do the actual conversation starting from my phone, meaning like I click into the different profiles and I send the DM or I send the Facebook message, whatever category I'm in, on my phone. But as far as replying, I will do a lot of replying through the Instagram desktop version, right? Because you can see everything. You can see all of your messages and you can respond. I have multiple screens in my office, so I can have, email going over here and have the, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like just being able to multi-purpose, or as women like to do, we have the ability of doing multiple things at one time, multitask. I do believe that is true. But just in general, I typically will do a lot of my replies on my computer, unless of course I'm out and about. But that initial morning time, because I do my prospecting in the morning, but that initial time specifically where I'm starting the conversation is through my phone.
And do you answer as do you have it up all day and you're answering, or you're like, I'm going to outbound in the morning and then in the evening I'm going to come back? Do you have something like that?
Yes and no. I think it depends on the day. Like if I'm in Zoom jail all day, where I'm on Zoom for, 6-7 hours a day, I can't be as timely, but I never let it go more than 24 hours ever. Unless it's the weekend, right? I'm not going to respond to work messages typically on the weekends unless it's urgent. I have almost 3-year-old son, and I just have really hard family boundaries on the weekends. But that's different for everybody. But for me, I will say that this ties into some of the other psychology aspect of why I teach what I teach, because most people, they want a response instantaneously, right? So if you're going to start a conversation with someone and that person takes the time to respond back to you, being active in your messages is key, right? Imagine if I called you to try to buy something, like or say, hey, Shelby, I want to go see this house at 123 Lexington, whatever drive, and you take 2 days to get back to me, I've probably called somebody else by then. So
Definitely
that rule applies to how we prospect on Instagram too. So if you're sending messages and having good conversations, and then all of a sudden you don't respond for 3 days, person's probably moved on. So you just have to be cognizant of that. But I will say, like, you don't need to be attached and glued to your phone by any means. No way. Right. Like, a lot of my clients will do the prospecting in the morning and then check it at night, or they have like time block check-ins. So like, open your DMs at 1 or whatever time might work for you. And I think everybody's going to be a little bit different.
Okay. The third piece in the beginning, you started out and you said the first piece is the who, and the second is the what to say in the conversations. And the third piece is the tracking aspect. So could you give us a little overview of what that means?
So the tracking aspect is, we have I kind of lovingly call it a very sexy Excel spreadsheet, if there's such a thing, but it's a big giant Excel spreadsheet. You have different days of the week. Each different day has its own category. So just think of it like a giant table. And then at the bottom of each spreadsheet, or at the bottom of it, I should say, you have individual tabs for each of the days of the week. So that way you can click into the individual tabs and be able to really type everything out. So like, let's say you're focused on one day people in your database, right? So the tab at the bottom would be database. And then you click on that, you'd have all of the people uploaded from your CRM. So 500 names, 1,000 names, whatever that is. Have their Instagram profile, their Facebook profile linked there. And then you'll have just hopefully notes on a conversation. But ideally, right, you have each day of the week where you have hashtags, accounts, and geotags labeled out. And then you have a tab down at the bottom where you can click on it and then really write it all the way out. So that's the first tracker. It sounds complicated, but really it's not. And when I show people this, they're like, oh my gosh, this is like the Bible of prospecting for Instagram. I'm like, exactly. That's why I made it. But then the second tracker is what I call the opportunity tracker. So what this means is we're tracking how many messages we're sending, how many responses we're getting, and then how many replies we are sending back. So how many outbound, how many replies, and then how many of those third responses we're tracking. And then the other piece to that we're tracking is, when did we go for the ask? Did they say yes? And then if they say no, then what is our follow-up date, right? So being able to have that all the way listed out. If they said yes, we mark the date for when we're having our meeting. After the meeting, we mark, did we add this person to our CRM? And then in the note section, obviously, what is our follow-up? And then the last tab on the opportunity tracker is you're going to rate the conversation. And the reason for this is, with all of my private coaching clients, for example, if I open their document and there's a bunch of ones, meaning you rated that conversation a 1 out of 5, to me, I can diagnose that very quickly and say, okay, you may have gotten a bunch of calls out of this, but you're rating all of them as a 1, which means most likely that person just got on the phone with you because they felt like they had to, versus being qualified to be on the phone with you. If I open your document and you got a bunch of 3s, 4s, and 5s, I'm stoked, right? 3s is typically a pretty warm conversation, but needs follow-up. 4 is like a really warm conversation. This person has said, yes, I want to send you business, but they just haven't, quote unquote, yet. And then 5 would be, this person is just like, Shelby, I'm ready to go. Like, let's go look at that house. Like, let's do it. Right? Like, 5 is the best number to see, but typically you're going to have a lot of 3s and a lot of 4s. And if as the coach, I can look at that and say, man, you got a lot of 1s. We need to work on that. What are we saying part to figure out and kind of diagnose the problem. So the opportunity tracker is 1 for me as the coach, but 2 also for the client to be able to see their progression. Because I never want someone to say, well, I've been doing Instagram for 60 days and I'm not getting any responses, or I've been doing prospecting, I should say, not Instagram, but I've been doing prospecting for 60 days and nothing's happening. Because for me, it's all in the data, right? The answer to our problem is all in the data, and we just have to know what to look for.
And so what is the tool? I have it open. Is this one of those 2 trackers you just went over is the tool for our listeners?
It's engagement tracker and opportunity tracker. So they're 2 separate Excel spreadsheets that I created.
Perfect. Okay, guys. So you heard it. You can go to Real Estate Rockstars Network. Holy shit. Just knocked over my waterfall. realestaterockstarsnetwork.com. Go to the toolbox and get access to this free tool. We love goodies. Thank you for that, Michelle. And so what else? We just went over those 3 major pieces. What did we miss? What did we not talk about today that's super important?
I mean, we covered a lot for sure. But I think the biggest thing with prospecting is it's not an overnight thing, right? It's one of those things that the better you can be at creating really genuine and authentic conversations with people, the more successful you'll be. I will also tell you that your content does have to be in line. You can't assume that if your content looks like crap, isn't sized well, isn't consistent, is stock templates or stock photos, or sort of that in-house marketing where it's just, you can obviously tell that it's not you. We call them boilerplate templates in my world. But if you have a lot of that going on and you're trying to prospect, you're going to have a hard time. It's just not going to work the way you want it to. If your content is up and running and then you couple that with good outbound prospecting, it's like pouring gas on fire, right? Or a fire that's already existing. It's only just going to get bigger. And for me, I will tell you, it's all about leverage, right? Leverage is the underlying piece to all of this, because the better we are at talking about opportunities with people, the better we are at using names that we know, the better we are at using Instagram as our tool, because Instagram will tell you, hey, you and this person have 14 mutual friends. Click on the mutual friends list and use leverage, right? When you're starting a conversation with someone, hey, I actually saw that we're both connected to so-and-so. How do you know them, right? Or I was actually at his conference recently. How do you guys know each other? And then that's the easiest way to open a really positive conversation with someone. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I want to create a vendor partnership with somebody. Well, what's the easiest way to create an opportunity for a partnership? Name drop someone else that you know, or yourself. Hey, I go here all the time. I had a client who landed an opportunity to record an entire 5-part video series at a tulip factory, or not factory, that's a bad word, but tulip like farm. So it was this really big influencer in Houston, Texas, that had a giant tulip farm. And my client was prospecting her because she thought, oh, well, this is one of my 5 cities that I really want to focus on. And so if I can get this person on my good side, quote unquote, right, I can go record content there. And then that will create that hyper local. Everybody will see me because everybody goes to this tulip farm. It's like one of the touristy type destinations. And so when she was creating that relationship, in order to do it, she not only went there several times herself and was able to use her own content to create and start that side of the conversation, but being able to say things like, this is where my clients go, or actually I want to recommend this to my clients that just moved here from California because I think they'll love it, or like being able to name drop other people specifically. Oh, I heard that you go to the same salon that I do, like whatever that might be. Leverage is everything. And we don't have leverage on a cold call, right? We don't have any of that on a cold call, but we have tons of leverage if we study someone's Instagram profile before we initiate conversation with them. And so I'll leave you with this thought, Shelby, which is, imagine if all 100 names you were going to call on a cold call list today, you also had 3 bullet points next to every single one of those names with 3 things about that person. How would that change that call? And that's what we're talking about. That is digital prospecting, and why I'll never do a cold call again.
Oh, it makes so much sense. So Allie Garced, she's co-host, the Agent Goldmine, you were on it. She, found out that I had my license in Lexington. I just got licensed in Lexington. I've been licensed in North Carolina for years, but I didn't even have MLS access. And this girl, of course, is like, Shelby, I have a referral for you, and so sent it over. It's like way on the outskirts, like weird, property, whatever. And it wasn't even a direct referral. It was, like a friend of a friend. So like it wasn't a direct connection. So I had to bust my ass to get this person to talk to me, which they're actually talking today. It's taken like a week of convincing. But one of the things I did, I promise I'm going to come back to your point, is it's a property that has an Airbnb on it too. And I found the property on Airbnb and I stalked the owner's, like the host's profile. And when I reached out to him, I crafted it around what I found on his profile, which actually happens to be true. Like he's a serial entrepreneur. So am I. He's a fitness dude. So am I. So it like really worked out. But all that to say, he said, no, 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 when it was just me trying to call or outbound, via text with this one phone number. I got like no other information. But once I finally was able to become a person, I reached out to him where he could see my profile and I could relate with the things that I knew he cared about. Dude, he was like, okay, fine. This is awesome. Like, let's get on a call today. And so I was like, dude, see, and I guess that's the difference. I'm making your point for you.
Absolutely. No, I mean, you said it beautifully. That is exactly what we're talking about and exactly why I crafted it and spent so much time really trying to figure out how to make it make sense. Because I mean, I don't know anyone that, I shouldn't say I don't know anyone, that anyone is very all-inclusive, but I don't know a lot of people that enjoy cold calling, right? Or they enjoy in that aspect of being hung up on or that constant, rejection. Nobody likes feeling like they're being rejected. And I think that for me, my personality too, it really came down to, I crave that connection piece with every client, right? Like you're in my world, like your success is my success and I care about you. And I think that that's what most real estate agents need to understand is that if they get out of living in that transaction and they focus on finding the relationship, their business will scale more than anything.
Okay, Michelle. So there's people listening to this and they want to learn more about you or they want to work with you. What should they do?
Easiest way is DM me on Instagram. I love when people say, hey, I heard you on so-and-so. So in this case, obviously let me know that you heard me and Shelby chatting and send me a DM and ask any question you have. I'm an open book. I'll answer whatever you guys got. But Berman Media Social is my Instagram handle, or you can just type in Michelle Berman-Mikel and it'll pop up.
Perfect. Love it. And guys, you know the drill. You can hang out with me or the owner of the show. We are The Shelby Show and Aaron Amuchastegui on the gram. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. I freaking love this episode with you, Michelle. This was freaking so tactical. It's my favorite thing when there's step-by-step and exactly what to do and examples. So you just made my day. Thank you so much for joining us. And Real Estate Rockstars, thanks for listening.